The economy, the trade, and the government in the People's Republic of China. China is the largest economy in the world and is the USA's largest trading partner. It has a communist government that undoubtedly affects both the trade and the economy. Therefore, I would like to find out, how do the decisions that the Chinese government make and other government-related events affect the economic development of the People's Republic of China? The first pointer indicates that during the 1950s, the Chinese average income dropped. This was most probably due to the Great Leap Forward program that ended up causing the largest famine in human history, with an estimated 15 to 30 million casualties. This is also around the time when the Cultural Revolution took place. The second pointer here indicates a time when the income began to rise. This is probably due to Deng Xiaoping's successor of Mao Zedong and his modernizations. For example, opening up to trade, as seen here. The trade has benefited China, as in 2014 you can see the difference here. This difference was worth 1.1 trillion. We can, this also shows this is also a good indicator of human development, because more often than not, the wealthy countries who can export machinery and other goods that cannot be exported from poor countries, they export these goods. They're more expensive than the primary goods, therefore often they make a profit. This graph indicates that during the 1960s, once again around the time the Chinese when the Chinese income dropped significantly, we can clearly see a correlation between the two graphs. It is evident that these these um, these drops may have been caused by the same by the same causes. Oh, and once again, we can see here that it is slightly rising. It means that the GDP is gaining. Once again, we can. It's another similarity with the previous graph that showed the that showed the income. With Deng Xiaoping's rule starting around the 1980s, 1990s, he introduced the modernizations and the openings to trade. And so we can clearly see it has had the same effect on this graph. Now, to look at the democracy score. The democracy score is an indicator of how free a country is. Of course, 10 being the highest and negative 10 being the lowest. We can see a point in the 1940s. Around that time, the democracy score became close to negative 10. Some causes for that uh, probably were the the revolution and the Great Leap Forward program. However, during from the 1960s and forth, um, presidents from the USA visited China, and well, normalizations and diplomacy began between the two nations. This could be a cause for the amount of trade that happens between the US and China today. Now to compare China to Russia and the United States. As we look on at the line in this graph that represents the Chinese income, we can see that from around the 1940s to the 1970s, there was large loss. The Chinese income was reduced. We could not see this happen in Russia or the United States. States, except for this one time in Russia. This this tells us that there weren't many there weren't many events in the United States or Russia that had such a strong effect on the economy. Now to compare China and Russia's democracy score to the United States democracy score. As we can see here, the democracy scores were quite low compared to the USA. A reason for this could be that both governments were, first of all, communist, second of all, in many aspects quite authoritarian, and that had had a strong impact on the democracy score. Meanwhile, the USA remained very democratic and more egalitarian than these countries over here. Although Russia, with its new system, began its democracy score began to rise. Now to look at the how much and how many people were investing in the countries at certain periods of time. It is known that in the 1990s, China's economy began to drastically grow, and therefore that encouraged many people to invest in the country, indicated by this pointer over here. It peaked in 1994 or 1993. Um, Once again, this was because of the almost ridiculous amount of expansion of economic growth. However, this this economic growth has been slowing down slightly over time and is now closer to the US and Russia's economic growth.